Hilchis Nizkei Mamon Perek Shlishi. So we learned that if a behemoth does something which is regular for a behemoth to do, then he pays a nezek shalim. Mashenkin, if he does something which is irregular for the behemoth to do, then he pays a chotzi nezek. Generally speaking, Karen, in other words, to go and to be mazik intentionally, that's considered irregular. And this Chamisha Maise Tammuz, there's in a behemoth, that's what we learned before, Karen and the Tuldis of Karen, which is Negifa and the Shicha, Revitza and Beita. That was the Tuldis of Karen. Mashenkin, Shein, and Alderos Regel, they are considered regular for the behemoth to trample and the behemoth to eat, and therefore for doing that, the behemoth is chayiv and nezek shalom. However, that din is only if it's in Rishus HaYochid, if he goes into Rishus HaNizik. Mashenkin, Rishus HaRabim, we learned in Rishus HaRabim, Shein v'regel potter, and then the Rambam explained, because it's regular for the behemoth to go in Rishus HaRabim, and it's regular for while the behemoth is going to Rishus HaRabim to wash itself, to eat. So therefore, it's the obligation of the Baal HaPeiros. The Rambam doesn't touch this clearly, but l'chura that's the pshat. It's the obligation of the Baal HaPeiros to watch his peiros that the behemoth shouldn't be mazik. Now we're going to learn that even l'moshel shein v'regel in Rishus HaYochid. The Rambam is speaking about shein over here. Shein in Rishus HaYochid is chayiv nezek shalom because he went to Rishus HaYochid and he's chayiv nezek shalom. Shein in Rishus HaRabim is potter, but he's potter als mazik. But now there's a new din called nanis. There's since lepeil, the behemoth was nanis from eating. So if he ate something which cost a lot of money, and lepeil, the bala behemoth could have fed the behemoth simple hay, simple barley, things that are much cheaper. So he wasn't really nanis from that expensive food. In other words, if you're paying mashir zika, you have to pay mashir zika, depending on what the behemoth ate. Masha'inkin, if you're paying mashir nanis, so it's a different type of, it's a new chiyuv. It's a chiyuv is because since you are nana from this money, so you have to pay for it. The kashal is what's the avon of the din, but that's the din. The din is when someone was nana from something, and the nana came also through the other person's loss. There's a mitzvah of zen nana v'zeli chaser, but over here there was a nana through the other person being chaser. The behemoth was nana, the bala behemoth was nana, and it came through the other person's chaser. So then you have to pay masha nana. That's what we're going to learn b'hamshach. Just derech agav, that this din of mashenana, the Ksos writes that when you pay mashenana, there's no din of meitav. Because the din of meitav is als din mazik. Als din mazik, when a behemoth is mazik or a person is mazik, so there's a din of meitav sedei, meitav karmi yishalim. When the behemoth eats in the Rishus HaRabim and you're paying mashenanas, you're not paying for the mazik, you're paying for the nanas. And b'negei nanas, there's no din of meitav. The whole din of meitav is a din in mazik, not a din in nana. All right, halach perek shlishi. Ha-behema muedes lechel peiris eirokis ukiyetzeben. That's regular for a behemoth to eat. The fichach im nichnas ul rishus hanizik. And v'ochlu dvarim shedarka l'ochlam. So the din is mishalem nezik shalom. You have to pay for the demei of the peiris to the Yerokis. Shnamar ubir b'steyacher meitav sadeo v'gemer. So lepel he was bir b'steyacher. It was a regular thing for him to do. So he has to pay meitav. However, v'im ochlosam rishus harabim. That din of shein is only bir b'steyacher. Mashenkin and machlosim rishus harabim. So he's potter. However, the nanis, if lepel, the behemoth was nanis, and basically means the bala behemoth was nanis by the fact that the behemoth ate, so then is mishalim mashenanis, you have to pay mashenanis, le mashe yizika, ketzat, nichnas ol rishus hanizik, and va'ochla shum shimene leit, he ate sesame seeds, or leit, which is a type of grass, or roots of grass, which are expensive, ukiyetzaben, b'shava dinner, is mishalim dinner, so you have to pay a full dinner, because lepel, he was mazik, and it was mazik b'rishus hanizik, and it was something which he was a muad to be mazik, so you have to pay, and you have to pay an nezik shalom. However, v'mochlosim b'rishus arabim v'nanis, he ate it in the rishus arabim, and lepel, so I was eating it as the mazik yipoter, but lepel he was nanis, is royin oisun kilaim soirim omer, you look at them as if it would be barley, omer is like bundles of barley, u'mishalim demei omer, or demei soirim b'sul, so you have to pay how much you would be able to buy this omer or seirim, these barley or bundles of barley, bezul, and bezul is the taich only 2/3 of its value. And the reason for it is because the bala behema will taina, I wouldn't have given the behema, I certainly wouldn't have given the behema shum shnei leit, there would be no point in that. I wouldn't have even given omer, I wouldn't have given omer or seirim, unless I would have gotten it cheap. I would have rather given hay, which is much, much cheaper. So therefore, if I would have been able to get omer or Seirim Bezul, I would have done it, because Lepel, I'd rather pay this extra bit. In other words, Dmei Omer Seirim Bezul is more expensive than hay. It's more expensive than Tevin. I'd rather pay, I'd rather have the Behema eat this Omer a Seirim if I could get it Bezul rather than having Tevin. The Memela is Azoy. So if the Behema went ahead and ate Loit or Shumshman, so if the Behema ate it B'Shus HaNizik, you have to pay Kama Shehizik. Mashenkin, if the Behema ate it B'Shus HaRabban, you have to pay Mashenena. What's called the Nena? The Nena is the Dmei Seirim, the Seirim, a Omer Bish Zoil. That's how much I was Nena, because that's what I would be willing to pay in order for the Behema to eat Seirim and Omer, rather than Shumshman and Loit. And Memelo, Mishalim, Dmei Omer, Dmei Seirim B'Zil. Halachi Gimel. Ochlo Eklum Haroim Lo. The Behema ate things that, in other words, there's a mitzvah that a Behema ate things which weren't necessary. You don't give a Behema such foods which are so expensive. But here, Fakir, the Behema ate Eklum which are Roim Lo. Kein Sha'ochla Chitim. It ate wheat. There's a hail V'lei Nanas. You'll appeal the Bala Behema is not being Nana, because he'd rather, because wheat is not good for him. So Memela is Potter. Now, Ochla Eklum She'en Darka L'Ochla. The Behema ate something which wasn't B'chlal the derech to eat, Kigin Sha'ochla Ksuse Kelim. So then that doesn't go into the gather of Shein. That already goes into a gather of Shinui, which has the din of Keren. And Memela, he pays a Chotzi Nezik, and then he pays the Chotzi Nezik. Bein B'Shus HaNizik, Bein B'Shus HaMazik. Ochla Eichlem She'en Darken L'Ochlon, Ken Sha'ochla Ksuse Kelim. So then, Bein B'Shus HaNizik, Bein B'Shus HaRabim, is Mishalim Chotzi Nezik. Why? Shezech Shinuihu. Shezech Shinui. So since it's a Shinui, so therefore the person is mechuyev to pay a Chotzi Nezik. And v'dereb bnei Adam lahaniach kleim uksusim b'shus harabim at sheyenuchomat. In other words, you have a shaila, the lechura, this person that put down his kelim in rishus harabim. So we learned that there's a din of kol hamishana b'acher v'shina b'potter. So lechura, since this person put his kelim or his ksus in rishus harabim, so maybe you should go into a gather of kol hamishana b'acher v'shina b'potter, and memela the bala behema should be completely potter. So we say no. That since Lepel, the fact that he put it in the Rishus HaRabim is not considered Hamishana, that's Dereb Bnei Adam Laniach Klein Mususim Rishus HaRabim, so therefore he has to pay. But on the other hand, since we're dealing with Shinui, so it has a din of Karen, so if it's a din of Karen, so he pays a Chotzi Nezik. Is Nachem Olam and Nachem Klar. A Behema eats in Rishus HaNizik, he goes into Rishus HaNizik and eats food, regular food, he has to pay a Nezik Shalom. If he goes in Rishus HaRabim and he eats regular food, so he doesn't pay a Nezek Shalom, but he pays Mashenanis. If he eats food which he's not Nana from, so he doesn't have to pay Bechlal. Even he ate the food, but Lepel is not a Nana because it's not good for him. It's not good for the Behema to eat Chitim. So Mela, that's not called a Nana, so Mela, the Bala Behema is completely potter. Now, if the Behema went ahead and ate something which is Bechlal in Darka Lechel, he went and ate Ksusa Kelim, so then it goes out of the gather of Shein V'Regel, goes out of the gather of Shein, which has a din that it has to be dafka in Rishus HaNizik. Now it becomes a Keren. So Memela, on one hand, he's chayiv even in Rishus HaRabim, but on the other hand, he's only chayiv a Chotzi Nezik. Halacha Dalet. Behema shehoise imedus b'Rishus HaNizik, and v'tol shepeiris b'Rishus HaRabim, but it's belonged to the Nizik, and v'achlosim b'Rishus HaNizik. So he bent over his head into the Rishus HaRabim from the Rishus HaNizik, and he ate peiris that were in the Rishus HaRabim, in the Rishus HaNizik. Say Hari Adavar Suffolk. You have to know what exactly is the estate of the Suffolk. Whereas when a Behema goes into Rishus HaNizik and eats there, he's chayiv. If a Behema goes into Rishus HaNizik and takes peiris out of the Rishus HaNizik, and he eats it in Rishus HaRabim, he's potter. He's potter. Masha'inkin, they say he's potter al tzmazik. Masha'inkin over here, he's standing in the Rishus HaNizik and he's bending his head over into the Rishus HaRabim and he's pulling it back into Rishus HaNizik and eating it. So the shaila is, does it have a din of eating? Because since Sof Kol Sof, he was standing in Rishus HaNizik, he ate in Rishus HaNizik. So it has a din of bir b'steyacher. Or no, since Lepel is taking this item from the Rishus HaRabim, so maybe the item which he took from the Rishus HaRabim, so from that he's potter. Lefichoch, eina mishalemes ela mashenenes. So he certainly has to pay mashenenes. However, v'im tofas hanizik kama sheizika, ein mitziyim miyodei sharei b'rishus ochlo. Halacha hey. Kelev shenichnas l'chotzer, and v'notel pasei bosar, and then v'hitzion l'rishus harabim l'chotzer acheres. So here's fakert. And the case before was that he was standing in the Rishus HaNizik, he bent over into the Rishus HaRabim, and he took something that belonged to the Nizik that was in the Rishus HaRabim, and he brought it back to the Rishus HaNizik. So the question is, since Lepel he was standing in L'Shus HaNizik, he ate it in L'Shus HaNizik, so Einach Hinami, he took it from L'Shus HaRabban, over here is the suffix whether he's chayiv als shein b'Rshus HaNizik or not. Over here, he took it from the Rshus HaNizik. Abu Lepel, he ate it b'Rshus HaRabban, Nacham ala kelev shem nichnas l'chotzer, v'notel pasi basar, and then v'hitzion L'Shus HaRabban, or he took it l'chotzer acheretz, which has nothing to do with the nizik, and v'achlam sham is mashenanis mishalim. Over there, he certainly doesn't go into together of ubir b'steyacher, even though he took it misteyacher. He took it misteyacher, and over here also you have to l'chura. There's not the beer that we said before, that since it's in Rishus Harabim and a person has a right to go, the behemoth has a right to go into the Rishus Harabim, and inevitably if it'll be in the Rishus Harabim, it'll be food there, he'll eat it. So therefore, the Bala behemoth is potter. So l'chura bishleim, if he goes into, if he's walking in the Rishus Harabim and the item is in the Rishus Harabim, so we could say, listen, you put in the Rishus Harabim, the behemoth walks in the Rishus Harabim, so it's regular for him to be there. Mashenkin over here, the behemoth went and took it into. It went and he took it out of the Rishus HaNizik. So l'chura, if he took it out of the Rishus HaNizik, so l'chura, there's no heter of that l'chura, it's normal for him to walk in the Rishus HaRabim. But Lepel, since the pasuk says so over here, you have to come on to l'chura. There's Gzeres HaKosov. The Gzeres HaKosov is that it has to be ubir b'steyacher. In order to be chayiv on shein, you have to be ubir b'steyacher. And mele, if the behemoth takes it from the steyacher, and Lepel, he eats it out of the steyacher, so that's not the mazik of shein, which you have to know how does that stem if being masber the din of shein. And knows l'chura, this is telling us it's Gzeres HaKosov. Kelev nachamol, kelev shenichnas lechotzer, and v'notel pasi basar v'hitzin l'shus harabim, lechotzer acheres and v'chachlosen sham is mashenanis mishalim. He only pays mashenanis. However, ochlam b'sodeh shabal hachotzer, he took it from the chotzer and he brought it to another part of the nizik. He took it from the chotzer of the nizik and he brought it to the sod of the nizik. Ochlam b'sodeh shabal hachotzer. So then mishalim nizik shalom kilo ochlam b'tech hachotzer sharei b'shus hanizik ochel kosof kol sof he ate it b'shus hanizik v'chein kol ki etz b'zeh. Halacha vav behema she'ochla echem she'ein darko le'ochlon elo ichlosen al yidei atchak. The behema ate something which is not regular, but al yidei atchak he eats it. Kigain para she'ochla seirim, which is irregular for a para to eat, or v'chamer she'ochel kashinim, which is also it's just a Michael behema, and but it's irregular for a chamer to eat it. But it happens. A dogim, or he ate kashinim, or dogim, or he ate fish, or v'chazir she'ochel chaticha basar, a chazir that ate a piece of meat, or v'kelev she'likik kasashemen, a dog that licked oil, drank oil, or v'chasul she'ochel tmorim, a cat that ate dates, v'chein kol ki etzeben. So these are things which is not like eating ksus v'kelim. Masha'enkin, it's not regular for to eat it. V'chein kol ki etzeben. Is ochlam b'shus hanizik, mishalim nizik sholim. Or b'shus harabim potter. B'shus harabim is potter because lepel the din mazik, because the nekudas advarim has a din of shein. There has a din of shein. And those shein doesn't have to be only something that regularly eats mamish, but as long as it's considered an achila yidei atchak, that's also called shein. So in other words, if the behemoth eats susi kelim, so then it becomes karen. Masha'enkin, if the behemoth eats things that are not regular for it to eat, like a potter shachlu seirim, and all that is the other things, so it still has a din of shein, and therefore machlu b'shus hanizik is mishalim nezik shalim, and over b'shus harabim he's potter because it's not karen. The din of karen b'shus harabim is chayiv, and therefore by ksus v'kelim he was chayiv b'shus harabim. But over here, since it's shein, so he's potter b'shus harabim. But on the other end, v'imnanis, if lepel he was on hana, so then it's mishalim mashenanis. Halacha zayin chaya shenichnas l'shus hanizik v'tarfa, and the chaya killed an animal, and the va'achla behemei basar. So the din is mishalim nezik shalim shezeh darka. That's not considered irregular. That's talking about a chaya shenichnas l'shus hanizik v'tarfa. Avol kelev she'achol kvasim ktanim, a chasul she'achol tarnegelim gdelim. So this is something which is very irregular for the behemoth. So then it's hariza shinui. This is considered a shinui. So it goes out of the category of shein and goes into the category of keren, and therefore mishalim chatzinas. Halacha ches. Sal sheyesh bei lechem v'nichnas chamer v'shaver hasal v'achal alechem. So the din is mishalim ala sal v'ala lechem nezik shalom, because shezeo dark, it's a regular thing in order to go ahead and stam be mazik So that's not dark, and then you only chayiv chotzi nezik on dark lazik. But over here, we're talking about a sal sheyesh lechem. So he went ahead and was shaved the sal, and he ate the lechem. So maybe he's chayiv on both, and nezik shalom. V'chein seir izim shiro lefes ukiyetzabei al piachavas. He sees a gourd or something on the top of a barrel, and v'nestabach b'chavis, and he started climbing up the barrel. And v'achalas alefes, and he went and he ate the gourd. And while he was climbing up this barrel, his v'shavaras achavis, he broke the chavis. The chavis tipped and he broke it. So the din is mishalom and nezik al shneim nezik shalom, because it came shedarka lechel, just like it's regular for this behemoth to go ahead and eat whatever it ate. It ate this lefes, it's kach darka leitolas bekelim v'lalas kedei lechel v'chein kol kiyetz b'zeh. So that's also regular. So any hezek that happens through a regular activity, which comes and knows he's interested in eating, that's regular, that's shein. And in order to eat, he went ahead. Before it was talking about he broke the sal, and over here it's talking about that he climbed up the chavis, and as a result of that broke the chavis. It's all part of the shein process. V'chein kol kiyetz b'zeh. That's talking about if on the way to eat he broke something. However, he already ate the bread, and then after he already ate the bread, he broke the sal. Is alalech mishalom nezik shalom, because that's shein b'shus hanizik. Of a vasal, that goes already into a gather of keren, because since he already ate the lechem, and now he's going ahead and being mazik the sal, so that hezek on the sal goes to the chotzi nezik. V'chein kol kiyetz b'zeh. Halacha tes. Behema sha'achla meteicha rechava. Rechava is like the big area in the Rosh Hashanah, like the square middle of the Rosh Hashanah, where people do business. Is behema sha'achla meteicha rechava. It was eating while it was in the rechava. Bein derech halichasa, while it was walking in the rechava, or bein sha'amda v'achla, it stopped in the rechava and ate. Is mishalom hashenanis, because the rechava is the Rosh Hashanah, so that's shein b'Rosh Hashanah. So he's potter on the hezek, but he's only chayiv for the hano. Va'afilu chazra al tzida rechava v'achlemen. Whereas they were standing in this chilukei deis and pshat in these words in the Gemara. Pashto over here the pshat is chazra al tzida rechava v'achlemen. So the behema was standing in the Rosh Hashanah, and there's the tzidi rechava. The tzidi rechava is a little bit elevated from the rechava, and that's closer to places which are reshus hayachid, and it's regular for the people in the reshus hayachid to put things in the tzidi rechava. They have vaisus reshus to put things in the tzidi rechava. But in the tzidi rechava, there's two madregas. There's a place of the tzidi rechava which could be reached by the rechava. In other words, the behemoth standing in the rechava could eat that area of the tzidi rechava, so therefore that's considered like putting in the Rosh Hashanah. Just like when the behemoth eats in the Rosh Hashanah, he's potter. When he eats from the tzidi rechava while he's standing in the Rosh Hashanah, he's also potter. Masha'inkin, if the behemoth walks into the tzidi rechava and then eats from the tzidi rechava, so that area of the tzidi rechava where the behemoth like is walking, and then people had a right to put it there, so the bala behemoth has no right to let his behemoth walk into the tzidi rechava and eat there. And therefore, if he eats from the tzidi rechava, it has a din as if he went into the reshus hanizik in nachamo. When the behemoth is standing in the reshus harabim and is sticking his hand into the tzidi rechava, so that part of the tzidi rechava, which is accessible to the behemoth standing in reshus harabim, that has a din of reshus harabim. And therefore, it's like a behemoth eating reshus harabim, which is potter al mashei zika, and he's only chayav mashenenes. Masha'inkin, if the behemoth goes onto the tzidi rechava, and then he eats things that are in the tzidi rechava, so that's as if he went into the reshus hanizik, and then he pays mashei zika. Nachamo. Halacha tes. Behema sha'achla miteicha rechava. Bein derech halichasa, bein sha'amda v'achla, is always mishalim mashenenes, because lepeil, he's eating in the reshus harabim. Now, va'afilu chazra al tzidi rechava, knows it turned its head to the tzidi rechava, and va'achla mehem, and it ate from the tzidi rechava, so it also has a din of being in reshus harabim, and he only pays mashenenes. Aval min nichasur rechava. The behemoth left the rechava, and then b'hol chava amda b'tzidi rechava. The behemoth itself is on the tzidi rechava, and va'achlan it's eating while it's standing in the tzidi rechava, which the behemoth has no really reshus to be there. Is mishalim mashei zika. Then it has a din as if he actually went into reshus hanizik. Now achla mi pesach hachanus, from the door of the chanus. So is it mishalim mashenenes, because that's the taich that the peiros on reshus harabim. The behemoth is not doing anything; he's walking by, and this is bepesach hachanus. So the baal hachanus has to make sure that the behemoth doesn't eat it. However, mitech hachanus, he put his head into the chanus, even though he didn't actually walk into the chanus, but he put his head into the chanus. So then is mishalim mashei zika. Then the baal behemoth has to pay mashei zika, because then it has a din that he actually went into reshus harabim. Halacha Yud. Hoisa mahaleches b'shus harabim. Uposhta tzavara va'ochla mial gabi chavert, and it ate from on top of the back of another behemoth. Va'afilo omda mishalim mashanenes, and even the behemoth stopped and is sticking up and is all standing on its hind legs and is creaking onto the back of the chaverta, is also standing on its hind legs. And nevertheless, mishalim mashanenes, he only pays mashanenes. Because she came derech habehemis lechem mezumi al gabizu. So just like when a behemoth is walking to Shusarabim and he eats, so he doesn't pay mashizik, he pays mashenenes. So al derezeh, when he's walking to Shusarabim and he eats me al gabi chaverta, and even if he stands up on his hind legs and he eats me al gabi chaverta, that's all regular, and therefore he only pays mashenenes. However, vim koftza v'achla al gabi chaverta, it's the behemoth is no longer standing with Shusarabim. The behemoth actually jumped on top of gav chaverta. So then it's considered like he went into the Rishus HaNizik, and Memela is Mishalim Zika. Why? Because Shegabi Chaverta is Kachatzar Nizik Uchashav. The back of the Chaverta of the other behemoth is already considered like he went over into the Rishus HaNizik, and therefore he's not only Chayiv Mashanenes, over here he's already Chayiv Zika. Halacha Yudalef. Behema Shehuchlika Be'even Ibmei Meraglea, and Lepel V'naflo Legina, as a result of slipping on either on a stone or maybe ragla, and it fell into a garden, and v'necht beton, it got banged. Al gabi peiris v'yirakis, that's one option. And memela, these peiris v'yirakis helped the behemoth. The behemoth knows the behemoth. There wouldn't have been the peiris v'yirakis. The behemoth would have gotten hurt. Masha'inkin threw the peiris v'yirakis, so it absorbed the bang. The bang wasn't so strong. Memela, the behemoth didn't get so hurt. Or another option is, so memela, it's nanas from this hezek. Oisha ochla, or the behemoth went out and ate. But the behemoth ended up stay on nizik without anyone doing anything. There was an oinus. The fact that the behemoth is in the stay on nizik is be'enis. So the din is in both cases is mishalim mashanenes. He doesn't pay ma shehizik, but he pays mashanenes. Vafilo holcha mi'aruga la'aruga vafilo nishar shamkola yimkulei is einei mishalim el mashanenes. So when the behemoth eats, so it's understandable, mashenenes. He got the hano because he ate. The other case was that it was nechbetal gabipedes v'yirakis, and we're saying also that there's a hano. Ma'ano yeshlo b'chavita shari motza makom rach. Notice the fact that there were payers under there, so there was a soft. He fell on a place that was soft, and as a result, the limb didn't get shattered. So in these cases, nacham al is walking, and it slips on a rock or a meimi ragla, and it falls into a gina, and either it's mazig the payers by falling there, but lepel by falling there, it was nana that it didn't get hurt, or it was mazig the payers, he started eating from the payers, but he got there not through a fault of anybody's, but it was an oinus. So in such a case, by both cases, Sai when he was mazig through the fall, and Sai when he goes ahead and eats later, he only pays mashanenes. That's talking about in the first time it falls. That's if it falls. It didn't fall, but it actually went into the stay acher. So that's mishalim mashayizika. So then that's pasha. That's the regular din of shein b'rishus hanizik mishalim mashayizika. Vafilu tinfa peiris b'meileda is also when the behemoth goes into there and peiris get dirty with the meileda that comes out of this behemoth, is also mishalim hashezika mipnei shetchilasi b'pshias. Even though the fact that it was tinfa meiperis, or the fact that even it ate, is something which the balabas can't have any balabatishkeit over, he can't control. But lepel, the mere fact that this behemoth finds itself and stay on nizik, that's in itself the pshia of the balabais. The balabais is supposed to make sure that this behemoth shouldn't find itself to stay on nizik. V'chein im dochvasa chaverta v'nafla. If the way the behemoth got into this day on nizik because one of the behemoths pushed the other behemoth, and through that the behemoth fell into this day on nizik, is also mishal mashizik. He has to pay mashizika mipnei shehoyu leila haviron achas achas kedei shelitchvu zeh. And it was the fact that these two behemoths were next to each other, and one was able to push the other one, and it should fall. That in itself is also a negligence of the person that the Bala Behema, because he should have made sure that they're walking by one. Memela, one shouldn't be able to push the other one into this into the soda and be mazig the soda. Halacha Yud Beis Huchlika, the pale the Behema slipped, and v'nafla v'yotzes. So when it was nafla, it was considered an einus. And now it was viyotzes, and v'chazr legina now went back to the gina. Is afal pi shechazr shaleila das habaylam. It went back shaleila das habaylam. Is mishal masha zika mipnei shehoyeli l'shamra shalei tagzer shadavar yadua shekiven sheyoda derech hagina harei chizeres meila. So you have to really understand what's the tzir over here. In other words, it went back shaleila das habaylam. It always goes back shaleila das habaylam. Every time a behema goes into chatzar hanizik, you have to pay, and the reason is because you should make sure that it doesn't go into the chatzar hanizik. So what's the over here? We're saying the chiddush is that even though it was huchlika and it was nafla, and now it went back, and it went back shalei das habaylim. Nevertheless, the baylim have to pay because the baylim should have made sure. The baylim always have to pay, and they always have to make sure. So the pshat Tesis says in Baba Kama, the pshat is azay. The chiddush not so clear in the Rambam. The chiddush over here is that even though lepeil, the baylim was shemer koroi, the baylim was shemer the behema koroi, and lepeils in such a case normally we say that it's considered an einus. In other words, if a behema is watch koroi, and then the behema goes, despite the fact that it was watch koroi, goes out shalei al derech haragel, and it goes stay acher, so the baylam potter. Over here, since he was already tam of this field, and he already knows how to get to this field. So here, even though he was shama koroi, but that's not enough because lepel the baylam should have known that this behema is very interested in going back to this field, and therefore regular shmir koroi is not enough for this behema. That's how Tesis touches up, and that's what's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Now the Maisa is in Rambam; it's not so clear. Let's read the Rambam again. Huchlika and v'nofla v'yotzes v'chazir legina is afal pi shechazir shalei l'das habaylim. The Rambam doesn't write clearly that it's so it was chazra, even though it was nishma koroi. The Rambam just says afal pi shechazir shalei l'das habaylim is nevertheless mishal masha yizika mipnei shahayilei l'shamra shalei tagzer shadav yadua shekiven sheyoda derech hagina harei chizeres meila. So l'chura it's takashver. If you learn Pashib Shat, it was always Chazer Shalei L'das Habaylim, and nevertheless it's Potter. So you have to say that even though over here, L'chura, he couldn't have helped it. So the answer is no, he could have helped it. But the Rambam, I'm just saying, the way it's brought down in Teisvis, Pshat is that he was Shemer Shmira Koroi. But for such a Madrega of a Behema, which is already Tam of this field, so the Shmira is not a Shmira Koroi. L'chura, that's Pshat in the Rambam. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hakader Shehichnes K'dei Reisa V'lechatzar Balabayis Shalei Bereshus, he brought his pots into the Chatzar Balabayis, and Lepel Shavrason Behemtu Shabalabayis is potter. Because Lepel, even though normally when you go ahead and you break these things, but Lepel, since it's Bereshus of the Mazik, even if he did it intentionally. In other words, Keren doesn't have to be Bereshus HaNizik. It could be also Bereshus HaRabim. But on the other hand, if it's Bereshus HaMazik, then he's potter. It's a Nuptur. Shavrason Behemtu Shabalabayis, he intended on breaking it. Is nevertheless this potter, and v'huska behem. Fakert if the behem of Balabayas became huzik from these k'deresav, so then balagderes chayav because it's a bear. He made a bear in the rishus of this nizik. Now that's talking about if it was hichnas shlei b'rishus. Now v'im hichnas b'rishus, if he had rishus to go in there, is then his potter. So then the balagderes is potter if the behem of the Balabayas gets hurt on it. Now, if him kibul of balabayis lishmiris agderis, so then balabayis is chayiv. So notice the fact that he gave rishus to the balagdera to go in makes it that the balagdera is now responsible if the behema of the balachotzer gets nizik. But that doesn't mean that the balachotzer is responsible to the balagderas if they're mazik the gderas. Only if he accepted about himself that he's going to watch them. So then, him kibul of balabayis lishmiris agderis. So then Balabayis is chayiv because Lepelia it becomes like a shamer. Then he becomes a shamer. Halacha Yudalit v'chein. That's the din b'negei k'teresav. V'chein am hichnas peiresav lechatzar Balabayis shlei b'rshus and v'achlosam behemtish Balabayis is potter because Lepel because Lepel over here l'chur is no chiddush because Lepel it's b'rshus of the mazik. There's no chiddush over here. Because l'chura the din of shein is only b'shus hanizik. It's only b'shus hanizik. Even b'shus harabim would be potter, and kolshke b'shus hamazik. And v'hum huchlika behen. And if lepel the bala the behemoths of the balachotzer was huchlika in these peiros which he was machnas shalei b'shus v'huska is bala peiros chayiv because he made a bid. That's talking about if it was shalei b'rshus. V'im hichnus b'rshus is potter. V'im kibul olu balabayis lishmer sapeiris. So then balabayis is chayiv, then faked, then the balabayis is also chayiv. Then the balabayis is chayiv for being mazik these peiris. Now, so this is the din we said, side by gderis and side by peiris, and nachamol, that if he was hichnis shalei b'rshus, so memela, so if it was nizik, so the other person is not chayiv. If the balachotz's parah was nizik from these gderis, from these peiris, so fakir, so he's chayiv. That's talking about if it was shalei b'rshus. If it was b'rshus, so if it was b'rshus, he's not chayiv for being mazik. The balakderis and the balapeiris is not chayiv being mazik. Is the balakderis or is the balachotzer chayiv for the gderis or for the peiris? That's only if there was an extra rishus. In other words, the fact that you're giving him rishus to put it in doesn't really mean that you're taking on yourself responsibility to watch it. In other words, the fact that you're giving someone rishus to bring in his gderis or to bring in his peiris, it means that he has rishus to go there, and therefore, if the other person's parah will get nizik from it, so he won't be responsible because he had rishus to put it there. But on the other end, if that person's behemoth will go ahead and be mazik these peiris, lav dafke that he's chayiv, unless he was mekabel on atzmei that he should be achroi for these peiris. That's din number one. Now hichnison shalei b'rshus and v'achloson behemti shebalabayis and lepeil v'huska b'achilosim. He was put it b'shalei b'rshus. And Lepel, the behemoth of Balabais, went ahead and ate it, and he got huzak through eating it. Now, if he would have tripped on it, so then he would have been chayiv. Mashenkin, he got hurt because he ate these peiros, v'huska b'achilosim. So then the din is bala peiros potter. Why? Because this person, the bala peiros, is not responsible for the fact that the behemoth ate these peiros, even though Lepel, he had no right to put it here. And Lepel, that behemoth, it's normal for the behemoth to eat it. But since Lepel, he wasn't mazik b'yadayim. Whereas if that peiris, the behemoth tripped on those peiris, tripped on that kedera, so the kedera was actually mazik him. So it has the din of a bear. But over here, the behemoth went ahead and ate the peiris, and through that, the peiris were mazik him. So that's not considered a hezek, which the bala peiris is chay. Bala peiris is potter mipnei shehu hoyo leisholitechel. If he brought in these peiros b'rshus, v'hinichu balabayis